All right, so deception scams. They're everywhere, right? And you've been doing some research on this, which is awesome because knowledge is power when it comes to this stuff.
It really is.
Some of these scams are so wild, they almost sound like something out of a movie.
Right.
But we're going to break it all down for you today. How they work, and more importantly, how to protect yourself.
Exactly. And it's interesting because these scams, they're not always just about, stealing your money. They really are designed to exploit our vulnerabilities, our desires, even our fears.
Yeah, it's like they're playing mind games with us.
Kinda, yeah. It's almost like psychological warfare.
Okay, so before we get into specific types of scams, can you give us like a working definition? What exactly is a deception scam?
In a nutshell, a deception scam is any scheme that uses lies, manipulation, and trickery to convince someone to do something they wouldn't normally do. Usually it's handing over money or personal information.
Okay, so it's not just about getting your cash, it's about making you act against your better judgment.
Yeah, exactly.
And you mentioned these scams, they prey on a whole range of emotions. How do they do that?
Well, think about it. They might dangle the promise of huge financial gains, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like with fake investments.
Yeah.
Or they might exploit your fear of losing everything with, a fake tech support call claiming your computer is infected with a virus or something.
Oh, I hate those.
They could even play on your kindness and compassion.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with charity scams, especially after, like, a natural disaster.
Wow, so they really are running the gamut of human emotions. That's kind of disturbing. But I mean, it's also kind of impressive in a twisted way.
It is.
Oh, wow.
And that's why it's so important to understand the psychology behind these scams. Once you see the patterns, you're much less likely to fall for them.
Right, it's like forewarned is forearmed.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get into some specific examples. Your research mentions 10 common types of scams.
Sure.
Can we walk through those and maybe throw in some real life examples too?
Absolutely. So let's start with the classic phishing scam. You get an email or a text that looks like it's from your bank or a company you trust.
Uh-huh.
They might say your account's been compromised and you need to click a link to fix it. But that link, it's a trap designed to steal your login credentials.
Ugh, those always make my heart skip a beat. But I mean, aren't banks and companies getting better at filtering out those phishing emails?
They are. They are. But, scammers are getting more sophisticated too.
Oh, great.
They're using better graphics, more convincing language, and sometimes they even hack into legitimate email accounts to send these phishing messages.
Oh, wow, that's sneaky. So even if an email looks legit, we should still double check that sender's address.
Always.
Be wary of any requests for personal information.
Right.
All right, what's next on our list of scams?
Investment scams. These prey on people's desire to make money quickly. The classic get-rich-quick scheme. You might see ads for guaranteed returns on cryptocurrency or hot stock tips that promise to make you a fortune.
But aren't some legitimate investments also high risk, high reward? How can people tell the difference?
That's a great question. A key difference is that legitimate investment advisors are registered with regulatory bodies, and they have to follow certain rules. Scammers, on the other hand, they operate in the shadows. Their promises are often too good to be true.
So if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Exactly.
It's a good rule of thumb for life in general. All right, what other scams do we need to be on the lookout for?
Lottery and prize scams. These are another very common one. You get a call or email saying you've won a huge sum of money.
Ooh.
But there's a catch.
Always a catch.
You have to pay some fees or taxes up front to claim your prize.
I bet a lot of people fall for that, especially if they're already feeling lucky.
You're exactly right. And they often target vulnerable individuals,
Really?
like the elderly, who might be more trusting or easily swayed by the promise of, a sudden windfall.
It's really disheartening that people would exploit others like that. Okay, what else is on our list?
Romance scams. And these can be particularly devastating, both financially and emotionally.
Yeah.
The scammer creates a fake online profile, often posing as someone very attractive and successful, and then they carefully cultivate a relationship with the victim.
It's like catfishing, but on a whole other level.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
They build trust, affection over time, sometimes even over months or years. Then they invent a crisis, like a medical emergency, a family problem, and ask the victim for money.
So they're preying on people's desire for love and connection. Oh, that's just cruel. What other types of scams should we be aware of?
Tech support scams, those are on the rise,
Yeah.
especially with more people working from home.
Right.
These scams often involve fake pop-up warnings claiming your computer is infected with a virus.
Oh, yeah.
They even give you a number to call for help.
Oh, so you call the number, then what?
That's when things can get really dangerous. The scammer will try to gain remote access to your computer, claiming they need to remove the virus. But once they have access, they can steal your data, install malware, or even lock you out of your own system.
So it's like they're holding your computer hostage.
It is.
And you're already panicked because you think you have a virus. You're more likely to do what they say.
You're right. It's a perfect storm of fear and urgency.
Wow. Okay. What else?
Charity scams, another one to watch out for, especially after natural disasters or during the holiday season.
Oh, wow. That's awful. Taking advantage of people's generosity like that.
I know, it is. And it happens more often than you might think.
Mm.
Scammers will set up fake websites or social media accounts that look like legitimate charities.
Uh-huh.
And they use very emotional appeals to solicit donations. But that money never actually reaches the people who need it.
So how can people avoid falling for these charity scams?
Do your research. Check if the charity is registered with a reputable organization. Be wary of charities that suddenly pop up after a disaster and pressure you to donate immediately. And always donate through secure websites or established platforms.
That makes sense. Okay, so we've covered phishing, investment scams, lottery scams, romance scams, tech support scams, and charity scams. What else is there?
We also have fake job scams.
Oh, right.
These are becoming increasingly common as more people look for work online. Scammers will post fake job listings or offer these amazing business opportunities that require you to pay upfront for training materials or background checks.
So you end up out of a job and out of pocket.
I know, it's awful.
That's rough. What else do we need to watch out for? We've got a few more scams to cover. What else have you got for us?
Right, so prize or sweepstakes scams.
Right.
Similar to like lottery scams, you get a notification that you've won something incredible. A car, a vacation, a shopping spree,
Mm-hmm.
But, surprise, there's a catch.
Uh-huh.
You have to pay processing fees or taxes to claim your prize.
Oh, man. That reminds me of those emails I used to get saying I'd inherited a fortune from some, distant relative I'd never even heard of.
Exactly. It's all about creating that sense of excitement and urgency, hoping you'll act without, really thinking it through.
Yeah, got it. So if you're told you've won something and have to pay to claim it, that's a huge red flag.
Huge. Okay, next we have debt collection scams. These can be pretty intimidating. A scammer will call or email pretending to be a debt collector, threatening legal action if you don't pay a debt and here's the kicker, you might not even owe.
Wow, that's really taking advantage of people's fear. With so much financial stress these days, I bet a lot of people just panic and pay up, just to avoid any trouble.
That's what they're banking on.
Okay, we've only got one left on our list. What is it?
And last but not least, online shopping scams.
Yeah.
These have become really common with the rise of, e-commerce. You find an amazing deal online for something you really want. Maybe it's a designer handbag or the latest gadget. But the website selling it, it's either a fake store designed to steal your payment information, or they send you, a cheap imitation.
That happened to a friend of mine. She ordered a pair of designer shoes online, and what she got looked like they were made out of cardboard.
Ugh, that's the worst. It's so frustrating to get scammed, especially when you're just trying to find a good deal.
Right. Okay, so we've gone through a whole laundry list of scams. Phishing, investment scams, lottery scams, romance scams, tech support scams, charity scams, fake job offers, prize scams, debt collection scams, and online shopping scams. Wow, that's a lot to keep track of. It feels almost inevitable that you'd fall victim to one of these at some point.
I know. It can feel overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
But honestly, the best defense against these scams is awareness. Just knowing that these scams exist and how they work can go a long way in protecting yourself.
Okay, I'm ready to feel empowered. So what are some specific red flags that people should watch out for?
Okay, red flag number 1. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Right.
Scammers are masters at making things sound incredibly tempting. But remember, they're relying on your emotions to cloud your judgment.
Okay, so trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. What else should we be on the lookout for?
Watch out for anything that creates a sense of urgency.
Okay.
Scammers will often use phrases like act now or limited time offer
Yeah.
to pressure you into making a quick decision.
It's like they're trying to short circuit your rational thinking. They know if you have time to think it over, you might realize it's a scam.
Exactly. Another big red flag is unsolicited contact. Did you get a call, email, or text out of the blue from someone you don't know? Be
Yeah.
very skeptical.
Especially if they're asking for personal information, right?
Right. Legitimate organizations rarely contact you out of the blue. So if someone's claimed to be from your bank or a government agency and they're asking for your account details or social security number, hang up or delete the message.
Good advice. Okay,
Yeah.
what else?
If someone is asking you to keep a transaction secret, that's a big red flag. They might say things like, don't tell your family or friends about this deal, or, this is a confidential investment opportunity.
It's like they're trying to isolate you from anyone who could give you a second opinion.
Exactly.
They know if you talk to someone else about it, the scam will be obvious. What else should we watch out for?
Pay attention to the language and the tone. If someone is using high-pressure tactics, threats, or intimidation, that's a huge red flag.
Yeah. I've noticed that a lot of scams seem to involve like spelling or grammatical errors. It's almost like they're not even trying to be professional.
You're right. That could be a red flag, too. Sometimes the scammer isn't a native speaker of the language they're using, or they're deliberately using poor grammar to target people who might not notice.
Right, right. So to sum it up, the big red flags are if it sounds too good to be true, if there's a sense of urgency, unsolicited contact, requests for secrecy, and aggressive or threatening language, those all seem pretty straightforward. But even knowing this, how can we actively protect ourselves from becoming victims?
That's the key question. There are a lot of proactive steps you can take. First and foremost, always verify the source.
Okay, so if someone calls claiming to be from, like, the IRS, don't just take their word for it.
Exactly. Look up the IRS's official phone number
Mm-hmm.
and call them directly to verify if they're actually trying to reach you.
Oh.
Don't use any contact information provided in the suspicious message because that could be part of the scam.
Good point. It's like double checking a map before you set off on a journey. Okay, what else?
Be extremely cautious about sharing personal information online or over the phone. Think about it. Does that online retailer really need your social security number to process your order?
No.
Probably not.
No, they don't. So if a website or someone over the phone is asking for information that seems unnecessary, that's a red flag.
Absolutely. And speaking of online security, make sure you're using strong and unique passwords for all your online accounts. I know it's a pain to remember all those different passwords,
Mm-hmm.
but it's crucial for protecting your information.
What about those password manager apps? Are those a good idea?
Yes, password managers can be incredibly helpful. They generate and store strong, unique passwords for all your accounts, so you only have to remember one master password.
That sounds way easier. I might have to look into that. Okay, what other steps can we take to, like, fortify our online defenses?
This one is important. Whenever possible, enable two-factor authentication. It adds an extra layer of security by requiring you to enter a code from your phone or email in addition to your password.
Okay, so even if someone gets their hands on your password, they still can't access your account without that extra code. That makes sense. What else can we do on a more, like, personal level?
Talk to your friends and family about scams, especially older relatives who might be more vulnerable. Just having those conversations can raise awareness and help people be more vigilant.
Yeah, that's a great point. Sometimes just having that external perspective can help you see things more clearly.
It really can. And lastly, if you see a deal or an offer that seems too good to be true, take a moment to do some research.
Mm-hmm.
Look up reviews of the company or website. See if anyone else has reported it as a scam. A few minutes of research can save you a lot of trouble in the long run.
Okay, so we've talked about recognizing red flags and taking proactive steps to protect ourselves. But what happens if, despite all our best efforts, we do fall victim to a scam? What should we do? So let's say, like, the worst happens.
Yeah.
Despite all our precautions,
Right.
we find ourselves caught in a scam. What should we do?
First of all, don't beat yourself up about it.
Okay.
These scammers are professionals. They know exactly how to manipulate people. It can happen to anyone.
Right.
The important thing is to take action as quickly as possible.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what are the first steps?
If you've given away any financial information, like credit card numbers or bank account details, contact your bank or credit card company immediately
Uh-huh.
and report the fraud. They can help you freeze your accounts and dispute any unauthorized charges.
So basically damage control.
Exactly.
What else should we do?
Gather any evidence you have of the scam.
Okay.
Emails, text messages, screenshots of websites, anything that might be helpful.
Okay.
And then report the scam to the authorities.
Okay, where do we report these things?
In the U.S., you can report scams to the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC,
Okay.
at reportfraud.ftc.gov. They have a whole system for tracking scams and taking action against scammers. You can also report it to your state attorney general or consumer protection agency.
And if the scam happened on a specific platform, like
Yeah.
a social media site or, an online marketplace, or should we report it to them as well?
Absolutely. Most platforms have ways to report suspicious activity or scams,
Yeah.
and the more information you could provide, the better. It helps them track down the scammers and prevent others from falling victim.
That makes sense. So we've talked a lot about, current scams, but I'm also curious about the future. What are your thoughts on how scams might evolve?
Oh, that's a good question. Scammers are always looking for new ways to exploit people,
Mm.
and technology is giving them even more tools to do that. I think we're going to see a lot more AI-powered scams in the future.
Whoa, AI scams.
Mhm.
What would those look like?
Well, imagine getting a phone call from someone who sounds exactly like your child or grandchild, crying and saying they need help.
Oh,
But
wow.
it's not actually them. It's an AI that's learned to mimic their voice.
That's terrifying. So we're going to have to be even more vigilant in the future,
Yeah.
especially as technology gets more sophisticated.
Exactly. But knowledge is power, right? The more we understand about how scams work, the better equipped we are to protect ourselves.
That's a reassuring thought. So before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your final takeaway message for our listener. What's the most important thing you want them to remember?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is.
Hmm.
Don't be afraid to ask questions, do your research, and say no to anything that seems suspicious. Your safety and well-being are worth it.
That's such great advice. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for sharing your expertise with us today. And thanks to you, our listener, for joining us on this journey. Remember, knowledge is your best defense. So keep learning, stay vigilant, and don't be afraid to trust your gut. Until next time, stay safe and scam-free.